as good a time as any to introduce the people sitting to my left. So if we start with Dr. Dan Reardon here, I'm going to look at some notes for this because these guys have done so much stuff. I need to make sure that you get everything. So Dan's an emergency doctor who specialises in deprescribing, high performance and metabolic health. He's the co-founder and former CEO of Fitness Genes, and he holds degrees in medicine and mental health, served as the science editor at Muscle and Fitness, and he's also the chief medical advisor at Good Nick as well. Returned to frontline NHS work during COVID, and since then he's been building a practice focused on what progress has left behind and patients we see on more drugs than ever with no plan for what comes next. Sitting next to Dan, we have Charlotte Braithwaite. Charlotte's a psychotherapist and is the creator of the psychological longevity framework. And after more than a decade in clinical and corporate practice, Charlotte brings a really unique perspective on resilience, on identity, attachment, and what human beings are really like when the performance stops. And then we come on to Lucy Canham. So Lucy is an in-flight manager for British Airways, but also the founder of Run of a Kind here in Birmingham. And through travelling across the whole world, Lucy's discovered running tours and connected with runners across 6 different continents, which is what inspired Lucy to open up her business. So quite literally for the last 8 years, Lucy has been running the world, I guess we could say. We're going to crack on with the first topic that we want to speak about here. And Charlotte, I'm going to come to you first in a minute when I introduce this. But we're going to talk about modern convenience and has it or has it not made us psychologically weaker? Like I said, we live in the most convenient society humans have ever experienced, and food arrives instantly, entertainment's always there, but we still feel overwhelmed. So, Charlotte, psychologically speaking, do you think we've become less able to tolerate discomfort?
I mean, in a word, yes. But what I think is really important to understand is that it's not about blame and it's not about your fault if you are struggling with tolerating frustration. You know, actually, when we think of the definition of patience, which is what I talk to my clients about all the time, your definition of patience is your capacity to tolerate frustration. It's not this sort of Zen Buddhist master kind of calm, cool, collected. Often it's grappling with having to wait or having to commit with something or having to have a level of discipline in a world that is now increasingly designed for convenience. A sort of a simple, playful illustration of this was a friend of mine whose son wanted to order something, and so they ordered it from Amazon, and he went and stood by the front door, and she said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm waiting for the Amazon man," and couldn't understand in his meltdown why he couldn't have it. And it's not because he's a spoiled brat, it's because his brain at his age hasn't had to wait for a lot of things. There's a culture of convenience that isn't really aligned with how we have grown over history. And so a lot of the time our instant gratification is conditioning. It's what we're expecting. And then we tend to self-blame or self-shame if we're then feeling, intolerant or struggling to actually graft for something that's meaningful for us.
Yeah. And Dan, bringing you in there, so do you agree, do you see that that modern systems are removing the need for resilience at all?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to understand about humans is that we are adaptive. So the best example of adaptation would be, let's say, the immune system. We all know that in order to be immune to disease, we have to be exposed to disease, infectious disease. But we're adaptive in many sort of different senses as well. So if you think about build muscle, you can't build muscle without damaging the muscle in the first place. You go to the gym, you lift muscle, you damage fibers, muscle grows in the process of its repair. It's adaptive. Emotional, the way we adapt emotionally, we have to be exposed to bad things through childhood and through adulthood to actually be strong emotionally. So the question of, are humans now less resilient? We are less resilient, but it's because we didn't class resilience and we didn't class adaptation as being important. And that essentially leaves us as adults with these big voids where we know there's problems. And in fact, we often understand the problems, but it's very difficult to tackle the problems.
Yeah. And Lucy, I'm really keen to kind of get your view here from someone that's travelled the world and spent so much time in so many different continents for such a long time. Have you seen this change firsthand? Have you seen people when they are travelling with technology becoming more frustrated? Have you seen the real world change day to day?
Yeah, so in the airline industry, every year we have to do our safety tests, and we also go through sort of case studies of things that happen on board to other crews, and things like restraining passengers to their seat, which is the ultimate sort of disruptive passenger when it gets so bad that they literally need to be handcuffed and strapped to their seat. Those incidents have gone up. There used to be about 1 a year, and now it's more like 6. So people are more stressed and angry, and result into things like alcohol and drugs to ease that. And then as all of the sort of stresses of flying and things like that into the mix, and then just that's sort of the extreme case. And then sort of over the 10 years I've been doing it now, day to day, you'll always have someone that wants to moan and get angry about something. That I don't think will ever change, and the majority of people are happy and friendly and polite. But I do find things like now we've introduced Wi-Fi on board. If the Wi-Fi isn't working, which is quite often quite often the case, an aeroplane used to be the one time where you could switch off on aeroplane mode and not have social media and messaging. And now when people expect it, they do get so frustrated and angry at us when it's not working. So
that is really interesting. And we've all mentioned technology in the answers there straight away. So I mean, it moves us naturally onto the next kind of big topic, and that is technology, which is, I guess, in essence, it's been designed to try and make us happier. But I think it's a broad question. But Charlotte, is it doing that? Is it making us happier overall? Is there a case for some of it making us happier, or do you just not think so?
I feel like I'm going to start this one again with, in a word, no. I think it's really important to understand we have technologies that serve us, and then we have technologies that are commercially designed to trade our attention. That's a really important difference. We sort of started with, let's say, the thing we're most familiar and is often debated is social media, but the days of social media, I think, have gone. Social media used to be Facebook, Instagram, and you would add your friends. You could see what your friends were up to. It wasn't about having a following. It was about actually communicating and seeing who you already knew. So we had social media. Then we had influencer media. And then it was about being influenced by people that maybe you admire or that you want sort of lifestyle inspired by. And we've sort of gone through, maybe we're still a little bit in influencer media, but influencer media and social media are different. Now we have algorithmic media. And algorithmic media is an entirely different kettle of fish. What we all sort of, I think, casually talk about being a bit addicted to our phones. But what I want people to understand, and I think is sort of known on a level but not properly understood, is that there are teams of people whose sole job is to make sure you do stay connected and addicted to your phone. A lot of the clients that I work with and a lot of the people that I work with have a lot of shame and self-blame around, I'm addicted to my phone, I can't stop looking at it. There's a very sort of individualistic, I should be able to control myself and my mind. And I'm saying, okay, well, there's you, but there's a whole team of people that you can't see whose job is to try and hack your brain and how it works. And so when it comes to technology now, we've not just got the attention economy, so which is how our attention is bought and sold through technologies. My concern now with AI in particular is that we have the attachment economy. It's going to shout over the rain. The attachment economy is very, very different because it plays with our attachment system. It's the way we relate and connect with people. And this is a key part of what makes us human beings. There are people now who are more comfortable outpouring their inner private life to ChatGPT than phoning a friend. And that data is being used, bought, and sold. That is not a confidential confidant that you are speaking to. It's getting shipped out, farmed out to data centers, and then used to inform big tech companies. Now, obviously, Apple, Google, and everyone aren't probably going to want to work with me. Now I'm saying this out loud. But I think it's really important, again, that we need to see the place for technology, but it can't replace human beings. There's a lot of noise about artificial intelligence and technology. What I'm here to advocate for is investing in human intelligence, because it's just an extension of whatever we create. Social media by itself isn't good or bad. It is how it's used, like with all technology. And I think that it's bringing awareness to... I'm not saying that the answer is to just abandon technology altogether, get rid of your phones. We live in a modern world. We need technology, but we need to be more conscious of what it is doing to us and what we are using it for.
So are we talking here about a system that is designed against us, really? So you're talking about big tech companies there, and they've got teams full of people who are looking to grab our attention. And we've spoke about this before, Dan, as well, with the pharmaceutical industry. I know we'll come on to that in a second. But do you think that the system is now designed against human health?
Well, so going on to the point that Charlotte's just raised, there's a lab at Stanford University. It's called the Laboratory of Persuasive Technologies. So if you look at the founders of a lot of the big tech companies, they all originated from this particular lab. And this lab uses things that we know about gambling to get people addicted to technology. So, some people, like when people say about, has technology failed us, or, we start asking those sorts of questions. Technology has been very successful for what technology was built for. It just so happens that what technology was built for is not the same as what humans need. And so I definitely agree that technology has done a lot of bad things. And it can be really challenging to find the places where technology has actually really improved life. There are examples. I mean, so the Melinda Gates, Bill Gates' his wife, at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of their early investments was actually building, allowing banking for females in India, Pakistan, Middle East, who traditionally didn't have access to money, finance, which limited their capabilities. So there are really good examples where technology has been really good for humanity. But I would say the majority of technology has been terrible for humanity. Okay.
To try and maybe find some examples where it has helped as well. Lucy, you work and have been involved in running for so long. And I mean, from personal experience, there are so many apps that are built to help runners, particularly designing running programs and how you can achieve your next goal. But I'm interested because you run a company that is designed around facilitating communities that people come and run together, yet these apps really are telling you don't need that. You can go and run on your own. So a couple of questions. Do you see that tech has helped running at all? But also, do you see that people aren't interested in doing it on their own? They actually still are craving for those communities that you create?
Yeah, so I think tech and running and the community aspect of running can all work harmoniously together if used in the right way. So it's amazing now that you can basically have a running coach. You question how good ChatGPT or another AI thing is, and runners got a lot of criticism for their running plans. You can now get a running coach for a lot cheaper than you ever could before, and even free. And you can write a run plan, which is great, and it makes it more inclusive if you want to get that advice and that plan and just start off. There's also things like Couch to 5K as an app, which has helped so many people start running. You can even have a celebrity voiceover cheering you on through the Couch to 5K app and follow that plan. I think there'll always be that place where you need that human interaction as well alongside the tech. So I know, having coached quite a few beginners myself, just sometimes having those people and that place and that time holding you accountable is the difference between you running or you not. So it just really depends on the person and how you're motivated and what you need. But I think they can all work really well together. Where it doesn't work so well is when they do give you sort of extreme plans. So I know, for example, with Runner again, you can put in, I want to run a marathon in 2 hours, like has just been achieved. And then it will set you off on some crazy first run that just you shouldn't be doing. And a lot of people have been injured that way. That I think once you've tried the tech, maybe for cheaper or for free, and it doesn't work for you, that's when people will come back to that community and that human interaction again.
Yeah, and I think we always saw that with the gym that we ran is you use things like tech maybe to get them in the door, but really they stay for the community and the long-term aspects. I agree with that. We're hearing responsibility and accountability mentioned a lot, and I mean my personal take, and we've talked about this before, is it's almost like everything we've spoken about now is trying to remove accountability or responsibility. People don't feel like they necessarily have to do things anymore. This is what tech is doing, convenience and pharmaceutical and medication and that kind of stuff. So Dan, if we come to you, do you agree with that people feel less responsible and accountable, and how is that actually coming through to you in a clinical setting?
Yeah, so I think that we're essentially trying to make the world easy. Convenience becomes a little bit of a sort of a trap in some respects. It's almost like a bit of captivity for humanity. But yeah, we're definitely the way that one of the challenges in healthcare is that there are a lot of problems now that are medicated, and really what we're medicating is culture as opposed to disease. And when you medicate culture, sometimes the medication sedates you in the same problem. You never actually solve the problem. You just simply sedate yourself within it, enable yourself to live within it. And that's never really a good thing. And I think that's one of the places where I don't think there's been a real good process of thinking in the way that we've released the GLP-1 medications for that exact reason. And we can sort of unpack that quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it was inevitable that we were going to end up speaking about GLP-1s, and we can certainly come on to that in a minute. And we can talk about it if you want, Charlotte, now, but I'm quite interested that we're looking at medication and things that will make you physically fitter. Can we get physically fitter faster than we get psychologically healthier in this case? And is that an issue?
Wow. Yeah, that's a big question. I think in history, brain and body got separated. It's a long historic lesson that I'm not going to go into now. But that we know that brain and body are the one of the same system, but we tend to look at them separately. And so I think sort of moving on to like physical health and the GLP-1 sort of conversation that's coming through, it's very body focused, but not necessarily encompassing of the psychological side of things. And so a lot of the time when we try to make changes just operating at a level of body or just operating at the level of mind, there isn't the behavioural change and the lifestyle change, because our psyche relates to it also in terms of identity. And it's also about self-worth, and it's also, all of the things that are at the level of the body, we also relate to in some way or another through the level of the mind. What I'm finding in particular, I am not a GLP-1 specialist by any means. Probably Dan is way more qualified to be able to talk about sort of how they work and what happens. I don't think... a bit like technology, it's not all good or bad. I think there's a big difference between everything we use with our body with intention and impact. Our intention can be one thing, the impact can be completely different. And so for me, I'm seeing a lot of clients who are coming in and talking about GLP-1s or taking GLP-1s, but are really struggling with the psychological process that they hadn't really been prepared or supported for. When, our bodies are a huge part of our identity, the clothes we wear is a huge part of identity. It becomes a huge part of our story as to how we relate to our physical being. And for a lot of my clients who may have struggled with their weight, to then go through a process of losing weight, but they've not necessarily changed their lifestyle habits or changed their behavioural habits, there's a bit of a disconnect with what their body is doing and where their mind is still at. And this is where I'm seeing quite a lot of body dysmorphia, or that all of a sudden they're getting a load of compliments because maybe they've lost a lot of weight. And these are people who've typically felt very shy, or then feel really overwhelmed and don't know how to process the compliments, or that they then feel, some of my clients are like, well, I feel like I'm cheating. And so there's a whole shame story around that. And I think we've got to be really careful that we don't take the story of shaming people about such a sensitive issue as weight and then just change the narrative and use GLP-1s as another form of shaming conversation. I think there needs to be education, proper education, not just TikTok education, people, and a real investment in actually understanding how identity is a really important part of that conversation, which I'm not hearing a lot of.
So yeah, and we're going to come on to Dan, the questions we might not be asking him, the conversations we're not having about GLP-1s at the moment. But so almost, if we take someone that takes GLP-1s to lose weight because they were carrying a bit of extra weight, are we saying that that's almost a protective mechanism for something else potentially? And then when you get rid of that, that opens up this kind of worms you're talking about. Is that what you see, Dan?
No, I don't think. I think the issue is more that losing weight, all it does is you're not actually fixing the. Sorry, is that me? No,
It's outside.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
You're not necessarily fixing the wounds that led to someone being overweight in the first place. So the GLP-1 doesn't fix that. And that's a major problem. So I think that's what sort of Charlotte's drawing on there, that all you're doing is you're exposing wounds, and the weight loss is so rapid, you're not giving the person the chance to actually, I mean, they might not even know what the underlying issues are. And if you look at the thing with weight loss is we've been studying weight loss for 30, 40 years. There's incredible research that's been done on weight loss. There's incredible understanding that has been built from people who lose weight, why they regain weight again afterwards. None of that has been applied to the use of GLP-1s. There's, from my perspective as a medical doctor and as someone who's worked in health and fitness for a long time, I have massive trust issues with the pharmaceutical industry, the government. Huge trust issues, and I can actually highlight that issue now. So, if you don't mind, if I can,
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm interested to hear.
Okay, so let's go 2010 to 2023. Hands up if you remember that period of time, hearing all the time in the media and companies about body positivity. Who remembers it all? It was rampant, to the point where 2018, 2019, we were seeing Dove adverts with obese people. We were seeing companies where massive budgets were going into this idea of body positivity. Now, come 2022, 2023, all of a sudden we start seeing GLP-1s. Hands up if anybody in the last year or two has heard anything about body positivity anywhere.
Only that it doesn't exist anymore.
Doesn't exist anymore. Now, there's a reason that I'm raising this, and it's an important one, because in that 2010 to 2022, 2023, if anyone, even doctors, dared say that being overweight was an issue, you know, there was health issues, diabetes issues, heart disease, risk of stroke, risk of cancer. If anyone dared say any of that, you'd be chastised for saying it. If anyone was interviewed on television and said that being overweight was unhealthy, you were chastised for saying it. We had 12 or 13 years where people were being told that it was okay to be overweight. There's no health problems, you're fine, you can be overweight and you can be healthy, even though every piece of credible research in the last 50 years has shown that not to be true. We had 12 years of saying it was okay. And then all of a sudden, GLP-1s come along, and now it's easy to be thin, so all of a sudden it's okay to be thin. Now, for me, I've got big issues there, and for me, it highlights that we're not on a level playing field. We don't know who to trust. Even as a doctor, I don't know who to trust. And all of a sudden, these GLP-1s being thrown out there, and I'm not disputing that there are some success stories with GLP-1s, but from my perspective, it's a cliff edge. And it's a very dark drop, and no one knows what's in there at the moment. That's my perspective.
Okay. Yeah. So, if we come to the coaching side of it, Lucy, and I'm interested to hear what everyone thinks about this. Actually, I know some weight loss fitness coaches that themselves are on GLP-1s. Yet they are offering a different way to their clients and people that are coming through the door. They're suggesting you don't necessarily need to do that. And I think that's an interesting, psychologically for me, I don't know how you square that circle, but have you seen yourself from a coaching point of view, do you know any coaches that are on them? And do you prefer to offer a different route to become healthy and lose weight?
Yeah, so I don't personally know any coaches who are taking them. I do know that quite a few of my cabin crew colleagues are taking the weight loss injection, and I know that we can get it much cheaper in somewhere like India, and you just go to a pharmacy. You don't need to even pass any tests. And I know in the UK you need to show that you need to take it, whereas you can just buy it over the counter in certain countries like India. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
It was that you offer through One of a Kind a different way for people to kind of be healthy and lose weight. And has it impacted? Have you seen an impact from GLP-1s and people taking them on what you offer as a healthier alternative to do it?
Yeah, so my approach has always been to build fitness as a fun and normal part of your life. So Run of a Kind sort of stands for just that community, fun, social side of fitness. So we do sort of different things to do with running, like party runs and running tours where you learn a bit of history and explore a place, rather than sort of having to feel like you need to do a 10 out of 10 beast of a workout, and just make it actually enjoyable and something that you look forward to and that is a normal part of your day. So I've never really gone down the sort of physique change or weight loss side of things, and more the other side of things, and where it's a normal part of your life, and then the byproduct is that you are healthy and you probably do lose weight. And I've always taken that approach personally.
Yeah, and Charlotte, do you think it is going to have a tangible impact on the industry, particularly the fitness industry? People don't think they need to go and do this hard work anymore. Are we going to see less people going to gyms? Are we going to see less people turning up to the traditional ways of losing weight? And is that going to be a big issue in the future?
I think we need to separate out maybe what we're talking about a bit more to understand this. There's weight loss, there's health. Those two things aren't necessarily always conjoined, because there's weight loss and there's also fat loss. Because what we know, whether it's GLP-1 or otherwise, is we can lose a lot of weight, but that sometimes it's muscle. And so actually fat loss and weight loss are different conversations that we need to have the nuance in the middle. For me, and like I said before, to preface what I'm saying, is I'm looking more at the psychological side of health, wellness, fitness, GLP-1 included, rather than the medical side, which I will pass over the button with Dan here. But for me, I think of a GLP-1 and those who are using that as a medication a little bit like how I approach those who I'm supporting who are on antidepressants. Antidepressants for me are like the scaffolding. Let's say you are your house and you might need to do some inner work and you're feeling a bit wobbly and you feel like the structure of your house can't support the load that you're carrying. And so a lot of people go onto an antidepressant medication, and I think of that like the scaffolding. The idea is the scaffolding supports you whilst you do the internal work on your house. It's not that your house is meant to necessarily live with scaffolding on forevermore. And to see it as a scaffolding as opposed to just a replacement or a way of being, or well, that's it now. I'm not going to do certain things that is good for my health because I don't need to, because I've just got this other structural support. It is not how I would advocate for any kind of medicative use, to be honest. I think that certainly with the clients that I'm supporting, for those, the plethora of reasons why people are taking them isn't just because somebody may be really obese. A lot of people are seriously stressed, pedal to the metal. We're living in an always on, always available world. And so there is a dissociation with our human needs. So many people are living fast and full lives, but not well and whole lives anymore. We are still better suited to saber-toothed tigers and caves than we are social media and the way we are living in the modern world. And so a lot of how we used to live was more conducive to naturally supporting our health than how we're living now. Even myself, as what I do as a therapist, when I'm in my practice, sometimes I'm sitting for 10 hours a day. I know that's not good for me. I know that what I probably should do is I need to do 10 star jumps between each client. Do I do 10 star jumps between each client? Rarely. Normally when I'm thinking about, I've got this talk, I should probably do some star jumps because then I feel like I have some integrity to talk to. And so there's this idea of, I think we all know intellectually how we should be healthier. But then there is the practical application of what it is to live in the modern world that we're living in now that makes that harder. That's not excuse, it's context. And so we are going to need to more proactively take accountability and responsibility for our health. And that comes down to choice. There are choices like GLP-1 that can be an accelerator or a catalyst, or it might be the one time that somebody feels like I can actually make some progress for once, but it has to follow through with actual behavioural change, actually addressing what it means to be healthy, and not just a replacement or a handing over the responsibility to someone or something else.
Yeah, and that choice is difficult though, right? Given everything we've spoken about today. And I mean, is the problem personal choice then, or is the problem, if we rewind a little bit to the system, is the system just wired against us, or is personal choice the issue, Dan?
Well, it's still on the GLP-1 conversation, or generally?
Yeah, I mean, generally as well, we can move wider with this in terms of personal choice and responsibility, and people feeling they can relinquish that sense now.
Well, I think one of the challenges of today is, if we look at, you mentioned, we've sort of briefly touched on happiness. We're all sort of trying to strive to be happy human beings, whatever happiness actually is. Is it a combination of achievement? Well, it is a combination of achievement and fulfillment, isn't it? And when we look at human needs, fundamental human needs, how we meet those needs, if we meet them in a deep way versus if we meet them in the technological, superficial way, that's not going to generate happiness, and it's not going to help us feel like we're progressing in the world. And I think one of the challenges today is that achievement is, we can achieve things without too much effort. And if we achieve things without too much effort, we don't particularly feel fulfilled by it. And so the general sense, whether we're having a conversation about, weight loss with GLP-1, whether we're talking about, exams where, they sort of tier them down to make sure everyone passes, whether we're handing out certificates for coming 10th place, there's a loss of fulfillment that challenges, our fundamental, underlying sort of reasons that we know make us happy.
Okay. I'm keen to make sure we move on with some tangible things that the audience can take away today. Sorry, I think my mic's going in and out. So if we move on to the topic of having covered what we've covered and how difficult it is at the moment, if we talk about, if we look to 2026 now and we want a modern, genuinely healthy life, we want to, how does that look like? And Charlotte, what do you see are the habits of healthy people in 2026, and what do you try and advocate for when you see them?
The way I sort of break this down is that if you can live a lifetime in a day, normally people are fairly fulfilled. What I mean by that is, we need to have a bit of childhood, play. Why is it that we think when we become adults that play isn't needed anymore? We really are just giant toddlers a lot of the time. Like, our kind of basic needs are fairly simple, but a sense of play, time for you, time for joy, time for movement. As a kid, you try and keep a kid still, they go nuts. Like, I've got a 2-year-old, and I think that we are designed to move and designed to have a sense of enjoyment, curiosity, and so much of the world now is convenient, not curious. So having a sense of childhood in your day. Then we want a sense of teenagehood. So something that's a little bit rebellious, something that causes a bit of internal controversy, something that actually we feel more alive and vital about. Adolescence is massively misunderstood. It's about identity and it's about feeling alive and vitality. Then a bit of adulthood. Some of us, that means work, but fulfilling work, something that makes us feel purposeful. I'm not saying that your job has to give you purpose. Sometimes it's that, I think the obsession, certainly for the millennial generation, of which I'm a part of, the story that I've sort of received is like, your work has to be your purpose and your passion. It doesn't, but make sure you have some of that somewhere in your life. Sometimes it's not about, having the dream job. Sometimes it's having the job so you can have your dream life. We need to flip the narrative. And then have a bit of retirement. Recovery. A lot of the time, I think in the modern world, it's positioned as we have a stress problem. Our brain is fundamentally designed to process stress. I believe what we have is more of a recovery problem. That so much of the world is on, that even if we are resting, and resting doesn't have to mean lying down on the sofa doing nothing whilst you mentally calculate all the things that you should be doing. That isn't rest. That sometimes rest can still be active movement, going for a walk. For me, one of the most tonic to my soul is paddleboarding. Like, it's the one, like, forget meditation, don't get me to sit down. I know I'm a therapist, I should meditate, journal, all those things. I don't. It's not what works for me. So it's not about what sort of prescriptively told. Having some curiosity of what works for you, and then making a choice and to kind of owning to integrate more of that into your life. It doesn't mean that everything has to be that you wake up in the morning, you do the artist's way, then you do breath work, then you do some yoga, then you do this, then you go. Having simple things that work for you, a little bit of play, a little bit of something that makes you feel more alive, doing the work that you do, and having some recovery. It's actually doing less to get more a lot of the time. Yeah,
and I personally struggle with that, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room do, feeling like if I'm sitting down and doing nothing, I don't feel productive enough, and that's difficult.
Me too, right? Yeah. And like, please do not think that I am the preacher here. Like, I think I try my best to walk the talk, and we are an industry. Often, in wellness and fitness in particular, but an industry, a society, a culture that is obsessed with optimizing. And I'm a bit bored of it and a bit tired of it. I think that there's importance in metrics for sure, but meaning is as important.
And Lucy, bringing in both your jobs really as well, traveling so much. We did get a couple of questions, having seen what you do, about how can you try and remain as healthy as possible in 2026 when we're so connected globally and we have so many people that are spending so many hours on planes? How do you do that? And then same question to you. I'm assuming you'll say running is part of it, but how do you feel we should be healthy in 2026?
Yeah, so I just absolutely love your analogy of living through all your life in one day. And I agree. I think you need to just sit down and really think about what your dream life and bottle that down to a dream day looks like, and be realistic that it's not going to happen every day. And everyone that posts on Instagram about their perfect things going on, just to really try. I know it's so hard just to not compare yourself to other people and what they're doing, and just have a real think about what a successful, fun, happy life means to you, and then make a plan of how to get there. And also just not taking things so seriously, and remembering just to take the piss out of yourself and each other along the way. Try and do it with passengers. But yeah, in terms of flying, my big increase in my personal happiness and fulfillment was when I became cabin crew, and I was working in an office before, and I kind of went through school thinking if I did well at school my career and job would be sort of paved out for me, but I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to be. Tried a few different jobs, and the rat race and the corporate environment just really didn't work for me, so I decided to give myself a little break and just do a job that just felt really fun. And I told myself I'd do it for 1 year, and then I'd work out what I wanted to be. And I've been doing cabin crew for 10 years now because it just worked for me. And actually, I think, you know, the tiredness and things, and working at odd hours isn't great for your health. Every sleep book you read says to get up and go to sleep at the same time, and that is impossible for me. But it's just finding out what fulfills you and what works for you. And actually, I do feel like I'm more healthy now I'm cabin crew, because I'm walking up and down a plane and I'm happier and I'm wandering around new places, and that's what personally fulfills me. And I get to run with cool people around the world as well, and again, and now do it in Birmingham too. So yeah,
great. And then Dan, you know, over to you, the same question. 2026, if you were going to tell someone clinically what you've seen, what they should be doing to be healthy, what would you say?
Number one, sleep more. Definitely, 100%. Yeah, sleep more, and that's pretty much for everybody. Then the other thing is do things to challenge yourself. And one of the easiest things that everyone can do to challenge themselves, unless you've got a major health problem that dictates you can't do this, is by starving yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. Having periods of fasting. Go through the challenge of suppressing your own appetite, letting your nervous system control, mind over matter with regards to your nervous system. Let your body sort of reset itself a little bit. Let your body, learn not just to burn carbohydrates, but burn body fat. Start stripping some of that fat away from your liver. And they're probably the two things that I would say: sleep more and starve yourself for periods of time.
Okay, interesting. Is that something you do? Intermittent fasting?
Yeah, definitely. Well, to be honest, not even just intermittent fasting. I mean, there's good evidence for, doing things like 2-day fasts every month or every couple of months. Some people do 5-day fasts, where over that time you might just have water, salt, black coffee, black tea.
Look at Sam's face.
Yeah. The
5 hours I'd struggle with at the moment.
Yeah. But the problem is we learn to read hunger as a signal of something bad, and actually it isn't. We can go for days, weeks without eating, and most human beings would be fundamentally healthier for doing that, as long as you stay hydrated. So from a mental perspective and from a physiological perspective, it's way better for you. And like I say, I think for the majority of people, it would do them good.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we've been talking about how everything's designed to be convenient, and you can have food on your doorstep in 30 minutes. So that's probably why I was a bit shocked, but it makes sense what you're saying. We're going to come to some audience Q&As in a minute. So if you have got anything you would like to ask based on what we've been talking about, then if you think about it now, and all I'll do is if you raise your hand, I will come to you. You might need to shout up a little bit, but I am just going to start with one question that we got sent. And the reason I want to start with this is because I've heard a couple of babies and kids in the background, and I thought this was an interesting question, and it's something I would like to know the answer to as well. So Amy, not sure whether this is Amy, my wife, that sent this in. It just said Amy, but I'm particularly worried about the impact tech is having on children and children's brain. I know it's bad for adults, but it almost seems impossible to keep kids away from technology in today's world, particularly from a young age. What would your advice be for a parent that's worried about kids' access to tech from a young age?
So There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that children should have any engagement with technology at all. Okay. There isn't a logical explanation for that. You'll hear people say, but they need to be able to use computers, they need to be able to use iPads. If you give a chimpanzee an iPhone, they learn to swipe. They learn to swipe the pictures. This idea that children need access to these devices is nonsense. The fact that schools have children using these devices is one of the most absurd things that I think I've seen in modern society. Parents that give their children phones to pacify them is absolutely ludicrous. The damage that you're inflicting on the child's brain doing that, and again, it'll be very easy for tech companies or universities that are funded by tech companies to come along and say, well, there's no evidence of that. Well, I'm afraid there's plenty of evidence of that. We can all find reasons why technology is good, but for a child who, let's say, for example, the child's been a bit naughty and you give them a phone because it's going to calm them down, or you sat at a dinner table, they're kicking off and you give them the phone to calm them down while you eat your food. You're not teaching the child anything. You're not teaching them to sort of control their behavior, to control their impulses, to engage, to read the room, to look at faces of humans, to look at people when they're getting upset, to look at people when they're getting angry. They don't learn any of these things. And there's a saying that neurons that fire together wire together. So the way we develop discipline, the way we develop resilience comes by different bits of our brain working at different bits, at the same time. And just completely disengaging children, letting them just stare at these screens. No one is ever going to be able to convince me any good will ever come of that, and we're seeing that. And it's just black and white for me.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I am one of those parents that I try my best not to give our kids tech, but it's just so easy. And I think it's really, we need to hear what you're saying there, really. Do you see it work, Charlotte, from a young age? You see it coming to fruition when we are children, teenagers?
Yeah, I could see us giving each other some knowing looks. So I'm like, oh shit! Like we've been called out. And you know what? It's this is one of those really human conversations for me, because in all my parenting, so I trained to become a therapist before I had children. And so when we were training to become therapists in the group, there was two sort of a divide in the room. There was those that had kids that were like, oh my God, I can't believe how much I've screwed up my kids because I didn't know any of this. And then there were those of us who were like, oh wow, we're not going to screw up our kids because we know, we know about this. And now with my 2-year-old, I simultaneously have this dual experience through every single aspect of her life. When my daughter is throwing an absolute fit and having a meltdown because I've turned off Miss Rachel, who at one point I'm semi-ashamed to say we referred to as our third parent.
You're not alone, Charlotte.
I have this sort of dual experience inside. So my daughter's kicking off. And one part of me, the therapist part of me, is like, wow, what an expression of free will, autonomy. I just want my daughter to have a strong personality and use her voice. And then there's me as the fatigued parent who's like, please, just do as you're told, do anything to calm down. It's a really interesting and difficult conversation that I have with myself all the time, because everything that Dan has said is right. And then there is the reality of navigating, especially being a modern woman in the modern world, where my career is important to me and that I'm trying to sort of do it all. I've got one narrative says that you can do it all, another that says you can't do it all at once. And I know that technology is a reality. I don't believe, what I really, really, really don't believe in is just offloading parenting to technology. We are quite strategic, my husband and I, of when we use technology, and it is kind of, as Dan said, it's when we're at the restaurant and we're like, oh my goodness, she's really distressed, and it is okay, watch this for a second whilst I'm trying to get all the crayons out, or I'm trying to get all the, I remember I did once attach multiple balloons to my daughter's arms in a desperate attempt to not use technology, but to keep her kind of like, oh God, what's this attached to my arm?
Not that you hoped she'd fly away.
For like half an hour. But I know that technology, and especially long exposures to technology, is not good. There is a really, really great book called The Anxious Generation. I don't know if any of you guys have read it, but
Jonathan Haidt.
yeah, really, really good book, because what that helped me to differentiate with my approach to tech was that there's a big difference between the impact of short form content and long form content. So things like movies in our house, totally cool. If we have movie nights and it's an experience and we sit down and have popcorn together and it's a no phone zone and we're watching that kind of screen, that has a different impact to scrolling. Because we are storytellers. What used to be sitting around a campfire telling stories is now sometimes watching a movie. But there's a big difference between storyline and life lessons and the hero and the story and the adversity that they've overcome, and sort of the moral and emotional lessons that we can take from storytelling, versus endless doom scrolling that just gives dopamine hit after dopamine hit to a brain that is not wired to cope with it. So I am not anti-technology in that way. There are certainly times where I know full well what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, I'm going to pay for this in years' time. But like, I am so dysregulated myself. It is a choice either between my child losing their shit or I'm going to lose my shit. And actually, I would rather not lose my shit for this period. So it's sort of a conscious, like, devil's advocate type thing.
There was an interesting interview about a year ago with someone called Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel is one of the early investors in Facebook. He was a founder of PayPal. He's now, one of the founders of Palantir, multi-billionaire, and he has children. And in this interview, one of the interviewers said to him, "How much exposure do you allow your children to have with phones, iPhones, iPads, computers?" And his answer was, about an hour and a half. And the interviewer said, an hour and a half a day, that's not really that much. And he went, no, an hour and a half a week. So the founders, if you look at Mark Zuckerberg, his children are not allowed to have any engagement with technology whatsoever. Steve Jobs would be rolling in his grave with what happened with the iPhone. How the iPhone has grown was not his vision for the iPhone. All of these tech founders, they don't allow their children to have any engagement whatsoever in the technologies.
Which is pretty telling. Dan.
When you said you don't think the child should have any access to screens, do you mean social media and scrolling, or do you mean watching excessively?
So, there has never been any research that has strongly shown that children watching television has any sort of particular detrimental effects. So I don't have an issue with children watching TV. The problem with TV on phones is that it's often a little video with icons of everything else that you can watch. So your commitment to the show isn't particularly great anyway. Just one point that sort of differentiating here between because you've just mentioned the book Anxious Generation. There's an American researcher called Jonathan Haidt who's written some incredible books. Before The Anxious Generation, there was a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. And it really highlighted how on university campuses, people were walking around with these cognitive distortions, really distorted ways of thinking that was being driven by things that they were being told through social media. But just in terms of flipping to research, one really interesting comparison was made between boys and girls. Years ago, boys were predominantly using their phones and technology for gaming, and boys didn't develop that much in the way of what they would classify as mental health related problems. Whereas girls who were predominantly using social media, there were these massive spikes in suicidality, actual deliberate self-harm, overdosing, and then getting diagnosis. And so it sort of became known more and more that social media, jumping between apps that parents don't know their children have got on their phones, becomes a real problem. And in terms of apps that parents don't know their children have got on their phones, when I see, well, if I go back 10 years, I would very rarely see children in A&E coming in with overdoses and deliberate self-harm. Nowadays, on one shift, I might see 10, 15 children that are coming in with overdoses and self-harm. And one of the things that I always do is ask them to show me the screen time on their phones. And what you always find is their screen time is as much as 9 hours, 14 hours a day. And it's interesting when I'm in conversations with the parents, because the parents will say things like, I blame the school for this. And then what I'll do is I'll take the phones and I'll show the parents that during the day, when they're in school, they're not on their phone. But when they're at home, all through the night, they're not sleeping, they're on their phone all night. So now going back to the question about, it's fine to watch Sesame Street on a device, no issue with that. But the problem is you're familiarizing the child with the device. They will see you using the device. They will see what you do with it, and the pretty colors and the jumping screens and the speed at which things can happen. It's too exciting for the brain. It looks too good. And even there's arguments that the definition in these screens is too good. It's too perfect. You can't even be distracted by distortions that you might get on old TVs making funny noises and things like that. It's too much. It's too much for a human brain.
So we're gonna open up now to any questions you might have about anything. So if you want to just put your hand up, I'll try and come round to everyone at the back there.
Hi, I have a question. So I'm of the mind, like you are, that screens and phone screen time is way too much. How do you convince a teen that what you're saying is true? I have a teen who refuses to listen to me saying that she has too much screen time.
You have to be very. So the thing is, it's a little bit funny, this topic, but it's also a very, very hard topic. And so again, if I talk about my experiences as being a doctor, and this is predominantly females as well. A lot of the females that are coming in cutting themselves out of anger because their mom's taking their phone off them. So unfortunately, there is more knowledge among these young people that they can escalate the response that is damaging to the parent. No one minds their kid getting angry, throwing themselves on the floor, rolling around, screaming and shouting. But for a parent to see their child bleeding because they've cut themselves, or they've gone to the cupboard and taken a packet of paracetamol, and that's what happens. And the thing is, the only way you can stop that is by not giving them the phone in the first place and not allowing them to develop for that dependency with the device, because that's ultimately what it is. It's a dependency. The tech companies, they've made us addicted. Now they've made us dependent. And the next level is where it's just a synthetic relationship.
And just to follow up, I think it's harder because so I don't think it's self-harming, but is so insistent that all of their friends are on the phone. So what's the problem? And I think that's the other side of it. The culture of us being told, every other parent lets their children do it. So then you're looked at as the bad parent by not letting them do it.
Yeah.
I have a question to weigh in on that.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Just like it kind of helps here. I can't see very well. So,
Just at the back, no meeting the back.
So, my advice personally, having been on my phone a lot when I was a teenager, I struggled a lot with my mental health, and I was comparing myself to everyone else as well. I think if you could find like groups, like sports groups or a creative like hobby or something, she will also make friends that are doing something creative with their time rather than just also sit on their phone. And maybe not necessarily take the phone away, but push her towards a better direction. Maybe a little bit helpful, maybe she can kind of balance between the two. I still use my phone a lot, but I do a lot of like active things, and that helps me not be like addicted to my phone all the time.
That's really helpful. And it's interesting, I was about to come to Lucy and Charlotte and about communities, and then Charlotte, your answer to that as well and what you've seen.
Yeah, actually, thank you. That was really... What's your name, sorry? Hi. Hello. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's it's a similar thing for adults too, right? When I'm doing a lot of leadership work or in corporate environments where I'm like, be off your phone more, and then the boss is like, yeah, but still be available for the calls, because this is the thing where technology and mobile phones have facilitated so much of our life, that so much of our life is now facilitated through it, that it almost seems impossible unless we go to this polarized extreme where people think we have to go live on a yoga retreat and like not, but be completely disconnected and off the grid, because there's deep within there is a recognition of just how addictive these devices are. To follow on from what, Sydney? Hang on, I want to make sure I've got your... Sydney, yeah, okay. Oh, okay, like Sydney, Australia, thank you. Like what Sydney was saying, I think that in the book that I referenced before, The Anxious Generation, there's a really good... sort of template, a guidance, that feeling different is one of the biggest challenges that we go through in adolescence and adulthood and humanhood, but that adolescence is about approval of your peers. You're not meant to give a shit what your parents think. That it's part of our development. Healthy development is we want to move away from our original family to integrate with the wider tribe. And so it's why as an adolescent you care more about what your friends think than what your parents think. With that though, it's about acceptance. It's about not being singled out. We don't want to be different. We want to feel approved of. And so when I've been working with parents on this sort of thing like phone addiction, it's can you find other families, other friends that are also doing the same thing, so that child doesn't feel like they are the only one. And having play dates is a bit patronising, isn't it, when they're adolescents, but having sleepovers and being like, girls, all put your phone in the bucket, like, so it's not just a singling out one person. I've got 2 bonus children, and that's stepchildren, by the way. I just like to call them bonus children rather than sort of the connotations of stepchildren. And so we've teamed up with like our cousins and things where we all do it together so that they don't feel like they're the only ones or that they're personally being penalised. So along with what Sydney was saying is sometimes it's about encouraging alternative, more healthier behaviours, not just taking something away. I personally believe, and this is sort of a reflection in hindsight on my life, I wish I'd have done more sports. I didn't do any sports. I didn't come from a family that did sports. It just wasn't something I was familiar with. And as I've grown up and I've come into the wellness industry, the fitness industry, the psychological industry, having a pact of people that you can win and lose and have shared experience and have tribe and collective identity with, I think is really, really healthy and needs to be advocated for a lot more.
Yeah, I'm going to come on to that with you in a minute, Lucy, but a lot of my work as well, aside to this, is collective groups of people training towards martial arts, boxing and MMA events. We see a lot of people that start that in a very bad place. They get a group of like-minded people, they achieve something at the end of it, and that sense of achievement is massively helpful as well. And is that something you do as well? Because you run a kids program as well, is that? Or do you have teens and adolescents that come and do Run of a Kind as well?
Yeah, so we get kids running that live in temporary accommodation multiple times a week. So we go in there, they live in a room in a hotel, and they are absolutely buzzing to just get to run around and be guided and, have a bit of sort of discipline as well. And yeah, you just see them and they absolutely love it. Some of them have phones, but again, I think it's not taking things away from them or saying they can't do something, but integrating it in a better way. So for example, we've got like a speaker backpack, and I'll let all of the usually teenage girls pick the music that we play, which is sometimes questionable. But again, it involves them, and then they feel more part of the experience and sort of included and seen, rather than sort of me being like, you have to do this and you can't do this. And definitely, I think a positive from the progress that we've had with technology is that people are craving those community things where they can switch off. And, people will still track their run through their phone and video it and take selfies before and after. But then more and more people will see that online through their algorithm, hopefully. And then that does invite more people to then do the same. The rise of the Run Club has been a positive to come from it. I think there's about 68 different free run clubs in Birmingham now, and you can run with a different group every day of the week if you wanted to. So I'd say that is one of the positives that has come from.
Yeah, and I think you would then slot in as that role model for them as well. So when you're saying they don't want to listen to their parents, and with 20 years of boxing coaching in my previous job as well, we used to work a lot with the Prince's Trust. They wouldn't listen to their parents, but if their parents spoke to a boxing coach or run coach or something like that, they almost assume that position of being a role model. And as long as you choose that person wisely, they will listen to that person as well. And I think everything we have said there would be a great takeaway. Have we got any other questions from anyone? No? Oh, yeah.
Have we got time?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We have, yeah.
What would you say a big problem and consequence are convenience? It's just that it's fundamentally changed our perception of what constitutes as effort. So now the ordinary stuff feels like, I feel great if I've just done a week of cooking meals from scratch, for example. And yeah, do you think that's part of the problem? How do we catch ourselves if that is the case?
So yeah, relative to what we just would used to see as normal, now we think that's the best thing in the world, that we've cooked a meal for ourselves. Yeah, I feel that as well. So, who wants to take that? Dan, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so when we're sort of thinking about fundamental human needs, so I mentioned earlier about as a human being, we need to achieve things and we need to feel fulfilled. And when we look at the fundamental human needs, certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, and one other that I can't remember. But the sort of the deep perspective of these needs is that they all require some degree of effort. So, for example, certainty comes from being skilled, having rhythm in your life, maybe having faith, maybe having a strong family, and ultimately that creates competence, as opposed to nowadays, we're looking for things that from the perspective of comfort or avoidance, and that creates a degree of incompetence. But so specifically for effort, all of these needs on the deepest level are met with effort, whether it's learning new skills, committing to go and see friends, and committing to meal times, developing mastery, doing things of service. All of these things which requires a lot of effort and also discomfort as well, actually gives us that sense of fulfillment, as opposed to when we outsource the things that require effort, we might partially get the same results, but we're not fulfilled by it. And the fulfillment is a massive gap. And the problem is, the easier something is, even though we don't feel fulfilled, we still do it again and again and again and again. It's you have to sort of be very intentional, and you have to really recognize that if you say, let's say meal time, and you say, I know meal time, if I'm making the food myself, it's an hour of my time. So you have to be very intentional of putting that hour to one side and saying, this is only committed to sitting down, making food and eating. If you allow yourself to get distracted and all of a sudden that hour becomes 15 minutes and you take the easy way out of going on Uber Eats, well then, you haven't been as intentional as you need to be. But unfortunately, there's no easy answer. You just have to be very strict, set the time aside and say, I'm going to put the effort in to do this at this particular point in time.
Do you agree, Charlotte?
I think it's a great question. I was sort of sat here thinking about I don't want to ever polarize something as really, really good or really, really bad, because I think that's where we get in a sticky situation with whether it's politics, whether it's, whatever the hot topic is. For me, I think it's about consciously choosing where you're going to choose convenience. And when it comes to your health, I would far rather you feel a sense of accomplishment because you have batch cooked for the rest of the week because you have chosen health, than offloading that to something else and your sense of convenience coming from another place. So if you feel like a sense of achievement because it's not the thing, it's what it means. And this is what I'm always talking about of all the metrics that we're now obsessed with measuring, it has to mean something to you. And so I'm going to use a terrible example, but I feel like it might be conducive. Let's talk about AI. So I've invested an amount of time to trying to get Claude to create a workflow to basically so that I do all my work expenses and it sort of does it for me. That is something I would rather offload as a convenience so that I can choose consciously to cook from scratch. So I think it's about a choice of convenience and really questioning, what is this in service of? What is it going to give me, or what will it cost me? And that when we choose convenience with, let's say, microwave meals, there is a cost to that convenience that may come back to my health. So always questioning, where's the convenience, but where's the cost? It might cost you more time to not choose the convenient option, but that is a cost that for me is an investment.
Does that answer? You okay? Go ahead.
So keep cooking.
Anything else?
I was going to go back to the fasting question.
Yeah.
What does evidence or research suggest in terms of fasting men versus women? Would you still recommend women and their needs to?
It's a really good question. So for years, women fasting was always considered not a good idea, just because there's a higher chance of hormonal disruption. The problem today is that we're dealing with so many more metabolic consequences of modern day living that maybe a little bit of an imbalance between estrogen and progesterone every so often is not as bad as some of the issues that we're trying to treat with fasting. But it's not also the metabolic consequences or benefits of fasting. It's also the fact of just reconnecting with the concept of hunger and just allowing yourself to sort of mentally get past it. When you're in a fasted state, believe it or not, your body functions better in a fasted state. As soon as you cross a certain threshold and your body starts to produce ketones, ketones are a great source of energy for your brain. And it just gives your body a chance to become metabolically flexible, flipping from always wanting to burn carbohydrates to start to dip into some of the fat stores that are available. So historically, the research was maybe not a good idea for women to be fasting or for fasting for too long. But nowadays, it is recognized that women are doing intermittent fasting. And maybe you're not doing 16 hours. Maybe you're just doing a fixed 12 hours, 12, 14 hours. Maybe you are just doing, once every 3 months, a day or two at a time of fasting. But the research has changed a lot. And there's a little bit of it's a balance of what are the other things that you're kind of constructing it against, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm conscious we've got about maybe 10 minutes left. So is there anything else anyone would like to ask? Okay, because what I'm about to do is just bring it back to the panel and put you on the spot. And I was just going to ask, just for everyone here, if we could have a short sentence to the most important thing you think they could take away from the conversation we've had today. And what I will say as well is I found this conversation really, really interesting. And if you follow Dan, Charlotte and Lucy, I feel like I don't want to say on Instagram now or anything like that. No, we spoke about tech. But wherever you can find them, follow what they're saying, because it's so current and this is such an interesting topic of conversation. I would jump on straight away. So if we just go down the line, if we start with you, Dan, sentence, most important thing they can take away from today.
Find things in your life that provide a bit of friction and then roll with it.
Great. Charlotte?
I think, like I said before, so many people are living very fast, very full lives, not always well and whole. For me, happiness is overrated. It is a state. It is a marketing message. What would sort of living a well life look like, and what gives you feelings of wholeness? What makes you feel wholesome? Because that is as important to our longevity and our health, rather than just sort of a very prescriptive, this is the right way. I think it's really important to take ownership of what does that look like for you.
Lucy?
Mine would be just to take the positives out of everything that we've spoken about with technology where you can, and be intentional in your use of it. Find a community of people that resonate with you and you have fun with and you can be present with, and just don't forget to have fun.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming today. It's the first one we've done. We'd love to know what you think and what you thought about it.
What would be your takeaway?
Putting me on the spot. No. If I circle back to projecting positivity when you're doing something I've always found that if I use my example of fitness, when you have a positive projection of yourself when you're doing it, for instance, if I sign up to an event where I'm going to compete, so I used to box, but it could be anything, when I give myself something like that, everything else seems a little bit easier. So if you can find a way to project yourself positively when you're doing your fitness, your health, whatever it is, your wellness, it always seems a little bit easier. And I would also say community is hugely important, more so every day. Thanks, Dan. Look, we'd love to know what you think about the event. So drop us a message if you want to. We are going to be doing more of these as we move forward. I'd like to give our panellists a massive round of applause because I thought it was so interesting today. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Lucy. There is loads more going on today. I think I can hear a choir singing outside. So if you want to go and listen to some people sing, if you want to hang around and have a chat, do so. Thank you for coming. We'll see you soon.